Sorry about that. Just having a little lover's tiff, that's all. No problem. How are you doing? I got to be honest. I love this church. Linc Church, you are beautiful. You are amazing. You are fantastic. And I am absolutely in love with this church. Give yourselves a round of applause. Unfortunately, my wife, Kath, could not be with me on this particular trip. She was with me last year. Some of you got to meet her. She was planning on coming on this trip right up until the last minute. And at the last minute, we made a decision for her to stay home because of the crazy season that our kids are in. Our oldest, Jordan, who is 19, started university on the day that I left to come to South Africa. Mitchie, he's my one and only son. He's doing his year 12, his matriculation year, and he's head boy this year, so he has a lot of responsibilities. And on the day I left to come here, also my 11-year-old daughter, she went on the school camp, and as we were getting closer and closer to coming to be with you all, we felt as a parent it's probably best that mum stays home and looks after the kids, and so that's what we decided to do. But she did say, please, 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 say hello from her and give them all a big kiss. So from my wife to you, you know you want one, don't you? And you guys over here like, what about us? What about us? Well, you'll have to wait. No. It's great to be here this morning. Really is awesome privilege to be able to share at any church, especially Linc Church, which is such an amazing church. I've had a great time, Dylan, already with your team and with yourself, and really, really look forward to what God is going to do this morning. And so I'm going to delve straight into it. How does that sound? And so if you're into taking notes, please feel free to write this down, because this is the title of my message. It is Culture. Everyone say culture with a cause. So that's the title of my message today, Culture with a Cause. And I encourage people everywhere I go to let the preacher in you out. Every week you have a preacher up here. Today it's me, this Aussie, who's flown all the way from Adelaide, Australia to be with you. But in every church meeting, there's always two preachers in the room. There's the person up here preaching, of which I'm going to do this morning. But then there's the preacher in your seat. And I want to encourage you to let the preacher in you out this morning, because what you say about what I say is more important than what I say. Does that make sense? What you say about what I say is far more important than what I say. And so I want to encourage you this morning to give me a big hearty amen. Amen. Fantastic. And turn with me, if you would, to 1 Samuel chapter 17. And we're going to read one verse this morning. 1 Samuel 17 and verse 28. And it simply says this. When Eliab, David's oldest brother, heard him speaking with the men, he burned with anger at him, and he asked, why have you come down here, and with whom did you leave those few sheep in the desert? He goes on to say, I know how conceited you are and how wicked your heart is. You have come down only to watch the battle. Let me just fill you in on what is happening here. David is a young teenager looking after his father's sheep because his father asked him to look after the sheep. And while he was being obedient to his father's command, his father gives him a second command, and he says, I want to know how your brothers are going, and I want to ensure that they are fed well, so I want you to leave the sheep and take some lunch to your brothers and come back with a report on how they're going. And so David makes sure that the first command of his father is taken care of. He doesn't just leave the sheep, he makes sure they're looked after. So he gets a shepherd to look after the sheep, ensuring that what his father asked him to do first is taken care of. He didn't just leave it. It's an aside there, but he makes sure the sheep are looked after. And then he goes with some cheese sandwiches to see his brothers. And now you would think that the brothers would be happy to see him. I mean, if someone brings you food, I mean, that's the way to a man's heart. That's what I was always told. You would think that these guys would be happy. And what we hear here is Eliab, who is David's oldest brother, and I have an older brother. Anyone have an older brother? Can't they be a pain? I mean, seriously. I have an older brother and I have a younger brother, which places me right smack bang in the middle. Yes, that's right, ladies and gentlemen. I'm the middle, overlooked, neglected child. Is there any other middle children out there? God bless you. I see that hand. I see that hand. I see that. God bless you. I pray for you in Jesus' name. Be healed. It's tough being a middle kid. You think it's tough being an older kid? No. You guys get all this kind of good stuff. And the young ones, oh my gosh, you're just spoiled. But the middle one, that's where it's at, I'm telling you. Anyway, so David goes to his brother and he's greeted with this unwelcoming greeting from his brother. And his brother says, why are you here? And who did you leave those few sheep with? And he comes up with his own conclusion. He says, I know, you're conceited. And then he says this. He says, you're only here to see the battle. And at that moment, I have to honestly stop reading and ask the text a question or two. And if you want to know how to read your Bible, I would say read it slow and stop. Have pregnant pauses and ask what you've just read questions. And so I stopped after reading the word battle. Everyone say battle. I've got a problem with that word because what I see in the scriptures is there is no battle taking place. You see, for 40 days, which is about 6 weeks, this giant called Goliath came out every morning and defied the army of the living God and said, let's not have all this bloodshed. Let's just have your champion against our champion, and whoever wins takes all. And this put fear into the heart of God's people. But here's Eliab telling David that there's a great battle going on. Newsflash, there is no battle going on. Granted, Eliab was dressed for battle. Granted, he was in the place of battle. And granted, he was talking battle. It's amazing to me that you can be dressed for battle, in the place of battle, talking about battle, and yet still have no battle taking place. At that moment, Eliab is just playing dress-ups. That's all he's doing. As is the whole of the army. They're dressed for battle, in the place of battle, talking about battle, but there's no battle taking place. Just because you believe something doesn't mean that you are living in it. One is values and the other is culture. Values are what we believe, but culture is what we do. One is belief, one is behavior. And for values to become culture, you have to be prepared to engage in a battle. I want you to get this. In order for values to become a culture, you have to be prepared to engage in a battle. I remember when our kids were much younger, and as all kids do, certainly in Australia, maybe not here in South Africa, they have their little idiosyncrasies that are less than pleasant, that are less than desirable, that are certainly not what I wanted our kids to do or be. And so when they were much younger, I came up with this idea that we would have the Rainbow 10 Commandments. And my background was sign writing and sculpting and painting. I'm a creative by nature. And so I made this incredibly beautiful artwork that had the Rainbow 10 Commandments. It looked amazing. It really did. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I'm that good. It was amazing. And I was really proud of myself as I stuck this piece of paper on the fridge with the Rainbow 10 Commandments, and it was awesome. The values were on the fridge, but at that moment, the culture was not yet in the house. And I learned something that day. It's easier to put values on a wall, values on a fridge, than to get culture in the home. What do I mean? Value number one, or commandment number one, was, thou shalt not stomp their feet. I didn't want my kids stomping their feet. It's not a good look when you're 37 years of age and you're still stomping your feet. It's just not good. And so I thought, I'm going to sort this out in the early days. But you know what? I had to engage in a battle because I just thought, kids, this is the rules, okay? But guess what? They didn't comply. And there was a battle in our home in order to get our values that were on the fridge to get the culture in the home. And every time our kids, and it was mainly Mitch, I'll be honest with you, the boys are, and he's stomping his feet, and I'd walk him over to the fridge, and I'd say, read number 1, and he'd say, thou shalt not. And at that moment, I realized I probably shouldn't have used Old English, but never mind. He says, thou shalt not stomp their feet. And there was a battle in order to get him not stomping his feet. The good news is this: he no longer stomps his feet. I won the battle. It was tough. And there was all these different values that we had. Thou shalt look a parent or an adult in the eye when you are spoken to. And so lift your head, lift your head. You want to look an adult in the eye. And then when there was the toilet training, oh my gosh, the toilet training season, we had to make a new list. And I remember one of the values was, thou shalt pee in the bowl. And it sounds simple, doesn't it? But I'm telling you, it was a battle. It was a fight. Particularly boys, because, they got their little... And like, kid, come on, aim for the bowl, please, aim for the bowl. And I'm engaging in the battle. What did that look like? It's me on my hands and knees putting a ping pong ball in the toilet. I said, come on, boy, you can do it. Just get it in the toilet. Come on. There were a few occasions where I had to have a shower after that moment. When you're in the battle, you get dirty from time to time. You get stuff on you don't want, but it's worth engaging in the battle. Because guess what? Mitchie's 17 years of age now, and he knows how to use the toilet. I won the battle. Come on. You've got to know how to engage in the battle. Identifying values costs you nothing. But making them your culture may just cost you everything. I'll say that again. Identifying values may cost you nothing. But making them your culture may cost you everything. You're in a great church being led by an amazing couple and an incredible team of leaders. And God has placed in Dylan and Tessa's heart certain values. Those values are incredible values. But in order for them to become a culture that changes culture, we need to engage in a battle. And so how does this affect us as a church today? What I want to do is just drill down into one of the core values of the church. In Luke chapter 19, verse 10, it says this: "For the Son of Man came to seek and save those who are lost." Everyone shout out, lost. You see, we use many words to describe those that are unchurched. It could be they are far from God. It could be that they are non-Christians or unchurched. But the Bible calls those people lost. Everyone say lost one more time. You see, the truth is, church, Christianity really is a lost cause. You see what I did there? Christianity is a lost cause. This is the very reason that Jesus Christ came, because people were hopelessly lost. In other words, reaching lost people is the core business of the church. Now, if I was to ask you, as a Christian who's been coming to church for many years, who believes that? Who believes as a value in evangelism? I imagine most of us in this room, if not all of us to a man, would say, Tony, I'm with you. Hallelujah. Praise God. I believe in evangelism. I believe that we've been left here on planet Earth to reach those that are far from God, the unchurched, non-Christians, unbelievers, those that are lost. I'm sure we'd get a hearty, resonating yes and amen. Value. We value evangelism, and that is a great place to start. But if I was to ask you one other question, if you believe in it, when's the last time you or your family engaged, put into practice, reaching lost people? would it be as a hearty yes and amen as the value? See, values are easy. Putting those values into practice is a lot harder. And I think sometimes, because we've been in church for so long and we get all this incredible preaching and teaching, and you do, this is an incredible church to sit under week after week after week, incredible ministry. And I think sometimes we think because we know something, we interpret that we're actually doing it. See, when I talked about Eliab, it was much easier picking on Eliab because we like doing it. Say, silly Eliab, he's just playing dress-ups. I wonder if that's what we as the church are doing. We dress for church, we go to church, we sing in church. But at the end of the day, I wonder if we're not too dissimilar to Eliab and the Israelite army that were gripped in fear and paralyzed and actually not doing what Jesus had asked us to do. Just a thought. See, one is belief and the other is behavior. Now, having said that, I've flown all the way from Australia, and I'm not here to make you feel bad. I'm not here to bring any ounce of condemnation there, but for the grace of God, go each and every one of us. We are on a journey just like you are. But I do want to speak about this elephant in the room, because if we're honest, we talk a lot about evangelism, but we probably don't practice it anywhere near as much as we talk about it. I don't want to make you feel bad, as I've already said, but I want to help with the process. You see, one thing I believe that we have as Christians in common with those that are lost is that we both hate evangelism. I think if we're honest as Christians, we hate evangelism. And those that are unchurched hate evangelism. Why? Because as Christians, we hate evangelism because it's just awkward. Let's just be honest. It's just awkward going up to someone, talking about an invisible God, how he's changed my life, and yet you know you're still struggling with certain areas, and they've seen those areas, and so have I really had a life change or not? And it's just awkward. And so you walk up there, and some of you are going to be tempted after this preach. I'm going to speak to someone, and you're going to go up to them and say, yeah, how you go? It's just awkward. It's just awkward. And the only person it's more awkward for is the person you're talking to. We hate evangelism. They hate evangelism because they hate it when you come up to them and they sense that you're trying to shove religion down their throat. And so they go, mate, I'm not interested. I don't want what you've got. So all of us have one thing in common. We all hate evangelism. Can we get honest this morning? I mean, if we loved it, we'd be doing more of it. There's a reason why we're not doing what we want to do. Can we get this real this morning? So Jesus spoke a lot about the lost. And he did that for several reasons, to keep it on the forefront of our thinking, but not to condemn us about what we're not doing or what we feel awkward about. But he also gave us insight as to how to do this. And he not only gave us insight through his words, but also how he lived his life. And in Luke chapter 15, and I don't have time to read what I'm going to refer to, so please in your own time, Luke chapter 15, it's a great portion of the scriptures. Jesus tells 3 stories. Jesus was a great storyteller. I think if we're going to be people that are effective in communicating this message of love, hope, and faith, I think we need to embrace the art of telling stories. Jesus was a great storyteller. And as a dad of 3 children, the greatest privilege I had, particularly when they were younger, is to sit on the bed with them and tell stories. And if I'm going to tell our kids a story, I'm going to engage with our kids. I'm going to get in that story. And if there's a giant in that story, I'm going to be that giant. And if there's a leper in that story, I'm going to be that leper. I want to communicate to our kids the message that is in the scriptures. Jesus was a great storyteller. And he tells these 3 stories. The first one was of a shepherd who had 100 sheep. And one of them just wandered off and became lost. Everyone say lost. And the people are sitting there thinking, interesting. The Pharisees were sitting there thinking, Jesus, I came for something deeper than this. And Jesus, as secure as you like, just moves on and tells another story. He's not intimidated by those who want something deeper, because Jesus knows you're so deep, you're ineffective. And so he tells another story about a woman who had 10 coins and lost one. Everyone say lost. And again, the Pharisees are there thinking, come on, Jesus, this is cute. We're not kids anymore. Get on with it. Jesus, very secure, moves on to the third story and talks about the parable of the lost son. This father had 2 sons. One of them chose to leave the household and got himself totally and utterly lost. 3 stories: the sheep, the coin, and the son. And Jesus highlights a few things in these 3 stories. The first one is simply this: he highlighted the value of the search. He highlighted the value of the search. You see, being lost implies that you are valued. You know, if that sheep wasn't of value to the shepherd would not consider that sheep to be lost. But the sheep was valuable to the shepherd. This is a point Jesus is making. He's saying that sheep was so valuable to the shepherd. The woman with the 10 coins lost one. You might think, well, what's the problem? You got 9 more, chill. No. But that 10th coin was of value to this particular woman. Jesus is highlighting something of the value in these stories. When the young son came to his father and asked for the inheritance, his father, with a broken heart, gave the son his inheritance before time. You only ever get an inheritance when someone's died. In getting that inheritance early, the son was saying to the father, "You're dead to me, Dad." And the father with a broken heart gives this particular son of his inheritance. And I imagine with a broken heart, the father prayed for that young boy on a daily basis. Why? Because he was of value. You say, well, what's the problem, man? You got another son? Got another son? How many of you have got more than one child? If you lost one of your children, would you just sit back, relax, and say, it's okay, we've got another couple of kids? No. It's speaking of value. Jesus is making an incredible point that the search for lost people comes out of a value we place on people. See, whether it's 50%, which is the story of the prodigal son, 2 sons, 1 was lost. That's 50% that are lost. Whether it's 10%, the story of the coin, or whether it's only 1%, the story of the sheep, Jesus is saying people are valuable. And I believe Jesus is saying in this community of Belito, whether there's 50% that are unsaved, whether there's 10% that are unsaved, or whether there's only 1% that's unsaved, it's worth seeking out that which is lost. See, on your worst day, you still have value to the owner. It's an amazing thing. No matter how lost people are to God, those lost people still have value. And sometimes I think we can get comfortable in church, enjoying our community, which is beautiful and right, but let it not be at the expense of the value we place on those who are not yet part of this community. Because there are people out there who are no less valuable no matter what they're going through. You may have seen this illustration before, but this is a 100 Rand note. And at the moment, it's quite pristine, quite new, quite fresh. And it's worth, get this, 100 Rand. This 100 Rand note is worth 100 Rand. But if I was to jump on it and get it all nice and dirty and creased up and crinkle it, that represents many of the people in our community. And while we're saying, look at us, we are pristine and we are new when we go to church, and we look at people who look a little bit like that 100 Rand note, know this: while they may be crinkled, dirty, and wrinkled, the value is still the same. This note, in this present state and this present form, is still worth 100 Rand. And the people that are yet to be part of this community are valued to God. And I believe Jesus is trying to say, do you value people? You're not going to reach people if we don't value people. Secondly, not only did Jesus highlight the value of the search, but he also highlighted the effort. Everyone say effort. The effort of the search. The shepherd left the comfort of 99. I mean, most businesses would be happy with a 1% loss. I mean, just 1%. That's a good day. But this shepherd, he says, this is great, but that one is still a value to me. And instead of choosing comfort with the 99, he chooses to go on a search, chooses to put himself in the place of discomfort in order to reach that which is valuable. It's amazing when something is valuable to us, what we will do and the harm's way that we'll put ourselves in order to help that person. You see, I would never run into a burning building. I mean, it's just crazy. Buildings on fire. Why on earth would you run into a burning building? And yet, on 9/11, the first responders found themselves running into a burning building. Why? Because there were precious people in that building. If we're going to reach the lost, church, it starts with valuing people, but there is effort that is required. There is a work to be done. It's not easy. If it was, everyone would be doing it. It takes somebody to turn a value into a culture. Going back to our original story with David, this young kid, he's looking here and going, what battle is taking place? And he goes to the king and says, I'm going to take this guy's head off. And he runs out to meet the giant. And I kind of see in pictures, and so I see this young punk of a kid with a glint in his eye, a smile on his face, a spring in his step, and a sling in his hand, and he takes the giant down. That took effort. And it's amazing what happened. The moment Goliath's head was cut off. I mean, David, he's got a sling and he says, I'm going to cut your head off. He hasn't even got a pocket knife. He's got nothing. But he's got a plan. And he hits this 9-foot-something giant in the head. He falls down. He's not going to take any chances. You know, like in the movies, you watch those movies and someone gets knocked out and they walk away from the body, and in the background you see the body come up. What? Why didn't you just kill him? I mean, like, seriously. Well, I reckon David had seen a few of those movies. Could be wrong, not sure. But I reckon David kind of saw some of that. And so instead of waiting for the giant to maybe, come to, he just runs over, grabs this big giant sword and cuts his head off. And it's so cool. He just picks the head up, goes, "Rah!" And you know what? At that moment, David turned a value into a culture. We don't talk battle, we do battle. You can clap, that was good. And do you know what that did? It put courage in the army of the living God. And the rest of the army rose up and they defeated the enemy that day. That's how important culture is. David was a culture setter. David was a culture carrier. And he put courage in others to do the same. Can you imagine Linc Church? What it'd be like if we actually began to put into practice what we're talking about today. Not only would it be good for you, but you would put courage in others. And all of a sudden, it wouldn't just be a value that we have as a church, but it'd be a culture. It's not at Linc Church we talk about, it's at Linc Church we do. This is who we are. We ooze evangelism. So reaching lost people takes effort. And thirdly, Jesus is highlighting the approach. Everyone say approach. The approach of the search. You see, in order to be effective in reaching those that are far from God, those that are lost, we need to know and understand our audience. And if we're honest, many of us don't understand unchurched people because we've been in church for a period of time, which is not bad. That's exactly what it should be. But we can lose touch with where people are at. And I believe what Jesus is doing here in highlighting 3 stories with the same point, what he's saying is it's not a one-size-fits-all. When it comes to reaching lost people, there are different approaches for different people at different times, in different seasons, in different situations. And so if you say, Tony, what do I do? That depends where your friend's at, what they're facing. And so Jesus tells some stories. And I think what he's saying, when he's talking about the sheep, I think what Jesus is subtly saying to us is, in order to reach sheep that are lost, you've got to think like a sheep. And so if I'm looking for a sheep, I'm not thinking, where would I be? I think that's what we do. We think, I'm going to be at church on Sunday, so I'm going to look for lost people at church. They're not here. They're not here for the most part. If I'm looking for a sheep and I'm thinking, what do I like to eat? I know I'm going to go to my favorite restaurant because I love steak. I've got a great little steak. I'll look for the sheep there. He's not there. So where would a sheep go? It's what I call the art of crossing over. It's the art of putting ourselves in their shoes. And no one does this better than Jesus. I think what we've done in the past, we've been very good at getting in people's face. You're going to hell, turn or burn. But Jesus taught us how to get in people's shoes. And so if I'm looking for a sheep, I'm thinking, okay, where would a sheep go? This is what I'm thinking, where would a sheep go? And if it's a hot day, and it's dry and dusty, and there's a big lake a couple of kilometers away, I'm thinking, you know what? There's a good chance that this little lost, hot, thirsty, 3-legged sheep may just find himself down at the dam. He may not be, but it's a good starting place. I can promise you this, he's not going to be in Hungry Jack's, McDonald's, or the restaurant of your choice. So you've got to think like a sheep. With a coin, how do you find a coin? You've got to think like a coin. I can promise you this, the coin is not driving your car. Have you ever dropped a coin? It could go anywhere. Have you noticed that? Once it gets on that edge, just... But this I know, it's not on the ceiling. And while this is not an exact science, it gives us a ballpark of where to start looking. And so more than likely, there's a good chance it's going to be on the floor under something. So again, how I position myself, my approach is going to be different. I'm not going to get a ladder to get on the roof. I'm going to be on my knees, looking under things, moving things that are low to the ground. You've got to think like a sheep. What about this son? This is an unusual one because this son isn't lost. He's just willful. I'm out of here. I think there's a good reason that the father didn't go chasing the son, because the father put himself in the son's shoes and thought, he doesn't want to come under my covering. And so he let him go. And in letting him go, it didn't mean he didn't care. His response was just to pray for his son. And I imagine every day he prayed and every day he looked out, is today the day? No, is today the day? But Jesus tells that there was this one day, in the distance, the father saw his son and he ran to him because he was expecting it. All three have different approaches. If we want to be successful, productive in reaching those that the Bible calls lost, we need to be a people that change our approach. In Matthew chapter 9, verse 36, it says, when Jesus saw the crowd, he had compassion on them because they were confused and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. We've done many different things in our church, as I know you have at Linc Church. And some has been met with some opposition. We did some men's nights which involved beer, burger and boxing. And the people in our community, the religious community, they didn't get that. They didn't get that. But I remember saying to our men's group, I said, guys, we've got to change the way we do men's meetings. Because I was convinced that most men's ministries are women's meetings in disguise. And I thought, my blokey mate friends are not coming to those events. And so what can we do? And so we've got to change our approach. And we started thinking about what is it that men like doing in Australia? And we came up with these three things. They love eating their burgers, they love drinking their beer, and they love their sports. And so we came up with this event. It stretched our church. It stretched the religious community of the city in which I live. But I'm telling you, bottom line, we reach men that were far from God. How do we do that? It was a battle. We got opposition. But I'm so glad we stuck to our guns. In January just gone, we just did a series called At the Movies. We took 4 blockbuster films and took a God thought out of them and shared that with our church. We said, bring your friends, bring those that are lost, bring them. Why did we do that? Because in our culture, going to the movies is really big. If you were to ask our church, who's ever been to the movies in the last 3 months, most hands would go up. And so it's an approach to reach those that are far from God. You say, where did you come up with an idea like that? I tell you, Jesus. Jesus was great at storytelling. And the stories he told were not in the scriptures. He made them up there and then. And they were secular by nature. It was about a farmer. It was about a fisherman. It wasn't about a saint. It wasn't about a church. It was a secular story. And he pulled out the God thought. For us at the movies, we're taking a secular story with the medium of film and bringing out the God thought. I'm not being prescriptive and telling you, Linc Church, what you've got to do. What I'm saying is every community has to be prepared to look at what we're doing and be prepared to, where necessary, change our approach. We have changed our approach again and again and again. Why? Because people are precious and they're valuable. I'm so grateful for my dad, because it was my dad's example and what he modeled and the culture he created in our home that led me to the Lord. It wasn't a song, it wasn't a sermon, it was a lifestyle. And he was that guy who got down on his knees. He was that guy who told stories. He was that guy who crossed over. And I'm so incredibly grateful. And I never want to ever lose the wonder that I was lost. I was blind. I was hurting. I was broken. I was far from God. But God. Who's grateful for God's but? But God. He's an incredible God. Will you stand with me this morning, Linc Church? I want to pray for each and every one of us. Then we're going to go into a song. And that song is, Dylan, what is that song? What are we going to sing? What is that called? Right here, right now. Fantastic. Father, right here, right now, we come before you with no condemnation. We're not going to beat up on ourselves as to what we are doing or not doing. we just open ourselves up. Linc Church, can we do something? Can we just raise our hands to heaven? Can we just do that? You know why I'm asking you to do that? One, the Bible says it, but two, it's like an image that I saw growing up where the cowboy would come with his gun at hand and as the higher power say, stick him up. And the person without the gun power would put his hands up to surrender. As we raise our hands, we're surrendering to a higher power. We're surrendering to a God who sees all and knows all. He knows your circumstance. He knows your situations. He knows what you're going through. He knows your fears. He knows your doubts, and He cares. It's an amazing thing to be fully known and yet at the same time be fully loved. You, my friends, are fully known with all your insecurities, with all your doubts, with all your fears. He sees you unfiltered. We do our best to filter our life and to put masks on. But here is God. He sees you unfiltered. You, my friends, are fully known by God. And that does not put Him off wanting to be with you. You are fully known and fully loved. And so here we are, oh God, hands raised toward heaven. We ask for you, Father, to stir within us, to give us a confidence, to give us a greater love for those that are far from you. We pray to you, God, for a boldness. We pray for a confidence. We pray for a wisdom to change our approach. Father, I pray that you would go before us and create opportunities even this week for us to share our faith in new and exciting ways. Oh God, we thank you that you go before us. We thank you that you go with us. We thank you that you linger long after we are gone. Father, if you be for us, then who can be against us? We give you honor, we give you glory, we give you power, we give you praise right here, right now, in the name of Jesus. Come on, church. Let's sing.